Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with fresh garden tomato sauce. That's right, I'm going to show you how to make a tomato sauce using fresh tomatoes. And while you'll often hear me say in these videos that what we're making is way better than what you can buy at the store, with this, it's not just a matter of being better than what you get at the store, and it's more about that you literally can't get this at the store. Okay, there's no sauce in a jar or in a can that will come even close to what you're going to experience with this. And if you've never done this before, I think you're going to be shocked just how simple and easy it is. In fact, the hardest thing is finding some of these, which would be perfectly vine-ripened tomatoes. And I'll be using some gorgeous golden plum tomatoes, as well as some very small but very sweet early girls, and some mortgage lifters, and a few San Marzano. And yes, we'll also want a few sprigs of basil. And what we'll do first here is pull off that green part from the top, which is called the sepal. Or is it calyx? Or is it both? And then we'll also go ahead and cut out the core with the tip of a knife like this. And I guess since we're going to cut the core out anyway, you don't have to pull off the sepal because it's going to come with it. And I think I just pulled that off so I could say sepal. But anyway, what we'll do with the larger tomatoes is cut them in half and then in quarters. And before I move on, let's just take a look at what makes a great sauce tomato. And that would be ones that have a lot of flesh and not much juice and seeds. Okay, can you see how meaty these are? That's why plum tomatoes are your classic sauce tomato. As opposed to this mortgage lifter, which while great in sandwiches and salads, definitely has a lot more juice and a lot more seeds in comparison to the amount of meat or flesh. Having said that, if they're fresh from the garden and ripe and sweet, they are going to work in this sauce. And that's it. After we quarter the big tomatoes and have the small ones, we will transfer those all into a bowl. And we'll reserve those until needed, at which point we can head to the stove and start our sauce. And for that, we will add a generous amount of olive oil to a pot, set over medium heat, to which we will add some sliced garlic cloves. And all we're going to do here is sizzle these in the oil for maybe 30 seconds or so, before we toss in some fresh picked basil leaves. And sure, if you want to crush or chop the garlic, go ahead. But according to my relatives, and also the movie Goodfellas, slicing is the way to go. But anyway, like I said, we'll give those a sizzle for about 30 seconds to give those a little head start before tossing in our basil. And we will continue to cook this for another 30 seconds or so. Okay, it depends on how thin you sliced your garlic, but we'll continue cooking until it just starts to think about turning color. And as soon as we see the thinnest slices, the smallest pieces starting to turn golden, we will immediately, but carefully so as not to splash ourselves, transfer in our tomatoes. And what's going to happen as soon as we dump that in is those juices are going to go to the bottom, and they will immediately stop that sautéing process. And we won't have to worry about our garlic overcooking. And by overcooking, I mean getting dark and bitter. And then to this, we will also want to add a nice big pinch of salt, as well as an optional pinch of chili flakes, which I'm going to add because I do enjoy a little bit of heat. But if you don't. I mean, you are, always have been, and always will be the boss of your sauce. And then what we'll do here is raise our heat to medium-high, and then we will poke, stir, mix, and toss these tomatoes, although not necessarily in that order, until they completely collapse and liquefy. Oh, and regarding the mixing and poking and tossing and stirring, that is probably unnecessary and a complete waste of effort, since if we just let this cook without doing anything, it will still collapse and liquefy, whether you touch it or not. But that is not why I'm stirring. I'm stirring because it's fun. And it's a proven scientific fact that stirring is one of the things that makes cooking so relaxing. All right, scientists can't really explain it, but it's true. But regardless of how much you stir, eventually those tomatoes will break down and the mixture will start simmering. And why it's so important to cook everything until it collapses and gets really soft like this is because in the next step, we're going to pass this through a strainer so that we can remove all the seeds and skins. Oh, and we should probably turn off the heat while we do this. And in a perfect world, the holes in the strainer are just slightly smaller than the size of the seeds. All right, I have some very, very fine mesh strainers, which would also work here, but they would take a lot longer. So for me, this is my official tomato sauce strainer. And once we've transferred everything in and pushed everything through, the only thing left in the strainer should be seeds and skin. And as you can see, all that amazing tomatoey goodness is now in our pot. And we are now ready to move into final production. And all that means is turning our heat back on to medium, or medium-high if we're in a hurry, and reducing this down to the thickness we want, which for me is only going to be a couple minutes. Okay, I want this fresh garden tomato sauce to be fairly thin, and you are really going to understand why in the next video. Oh yeah, this is just part 1 in a 2-part series. And in part 2, I'm going to show you the real secret to why Italian pastas are so great. So I'm only going to reduce mine for a few minutes, until it just thickens up ever so slightly, at which point it will be ready to use in all kinds of amazing recipes. And of course, you could reduce this down much more, like by half, and end up with a much thicker sauce similar to something that comes out of the jar. But you gotta trust me here. While this does look a little bit thin, in the next video, where I show you how to make pasta alla matriciana, which will, especially if you use this fresh garden tomato sauce, change your life. And one of the keys, as you will see, is finishing the cooking of the pasta in the sauce, which is why we don't want it too thick. Okay, so that's what's coming up. And basically the plan is, find some of these, and then make some of this, so that we can eventually eat this. And oh my God, you really do want to eat this. Which is why I really do hope you give this a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.